In a distant province, there once walked 3 monks. No one knew where they came from. No one knew their names, but everywhere they went, they laughed. Not at anything in particular, not at anyone. They simply laughed. In the beginning, people avoided them. Some thought they were fools. Others thought they had lost their minds. But laughter is difficult to ignore. One day, in a marketplace, the 3 monks stood silently and began laughing. It started softly. Then it grew, full, deep, effortless. A child nearby began to laugh with them. He didn't know why, but he laughed. A woman passing by tried to hold herself back, but she failed. Soon, a shopkeeper laughed. Then another, and before long, the entire marketplace was filled with laughter. Nothing had changed, and yet everything felt lighter. The monks bowed slightly and moved on. They never explained. Village after village, the same thing happened. Where people carried worry, they left laughter behind. Where people were serious, they left silence, followed by joy. Years passed. Then, one morning in a small village, one of the monks died. The villagers gathered. "This is where their laughter ends," they whispered, "because death is not a thing to laugh at." The 2 remaining monks stood beside their companion. They looked at him quietly, and then they began to laugh. Not loudly this time, not wildly, just a soft, gentle laughter. The villagers were disturbed. One of them stepped forward. "Why are you laughing?" he asked. "Your friend is dead." The monks looked at him. One of them said, "For years, we lived together, laughing." The other added, "We were always wondering which one of us would leave first." They looked at their friend again. "He has gone ahead," they said, "and he has gone laughing." The villagers fell silent. They had expected grief. They found something else. That evening, the funeral was prepared. As the fire was lit, there was a sudden crackling sound. From within the robes of the dead monk, small fireworks began to burst. Light filled the air. Soft colors flickered in the evening sky. The crowd stepped back in surprise. Then, slowly, someone laughed. Not because it was funny, but because something inside them had loosened. The 2 monks smiled. He knew, one said quietly, "You would become serious." So, he left you one last laughter. The fire burned steadily, but the mood had changed. There was no heaviness, no burden, only a quiet understanding that could not be explained. The next morning, the 2 monks left the village. As always, they were laughing, and as always, they said nothing. But those who had seen them never forgot, because they had learned something without being taught, that life does not become lighter by holding it tightly. And sometimes, the deepest wisdom does not come in words, but in a simple, unnecessary laugh. Because something had shifted. Not outside, but within. They began to notice how tightly they held their thoughts, how seriously they held their fears, how heavily they carried themselves. And slowly, they started to let go. Not completely, but just enough to breathe. And maybe that was the teaching. Not to escape life, not to avoid pain, but to stop holding everything so tightly. Because in the end, whether you laugh or cry, life will still pass. So the question is, will you carry it like a burden, or meet it with a little laughter? And if, even for a moment, this story made something inside you lighter, then don't keep it to yourself. Let it travel. just like they did, because sometimes a single laugh is enough to change a life.